It was supposed to be a perfect day. The morning sun was streaming through the glass walls of the control center, spilling golden light across polished floors and rows of high-tech consoles. The air buzzed with nervous energy. After months of preparation, today was the final launch test for a satellite system that could change the world. It was a joint project between Google's research division and an elite space technology firm. Reporters were outside. Investors were watching through a live feed. Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google, was standing at the center of it all, quietly observing, a calm figure in the middle of chaos. At least that's what it looked like from the outside. Inside, his chest was tight. This wasn't just another project. This satellite system, codenamed Nova, had the power to provide free, high-speed internet to the most remote villages on Earth. Sundar knew exactly what that could mean for children growing up without access to education. For families, cut off from the rest of the world. For young dreamers who needed just one chance to connect, to learn, change their lives. This was personal for him. He had grown up in a small town in India, sharing a single telephone with neighbors. He had walked miles to reach a library. He knew how hard it was to dream big when the world around you was small. The countdown too. The test was displayed in bold red numbers on a massive digital screen. 2 hours, 12 minutes, 47 seconds. The hum of servers and the steady tapping of keyboards filled the room. Engineers spoke in low voices, eyes locked on their monitors. Every so often, a burst of laughter or nervous chatter would break out, only to be swallowed again by the tension that kept building as launch time approached. Sundar walked between rows of workstations. Greeting each team member by name, he asked how they were feeling, if they'd had breakfast, if they needed water or coffee. It wasn't just small talk, he genuinely cared. He believed that great ideas didn't come from machines, but from people. And people worked best when they felt valued. But under his warm smile, he was calculating risks, thinking of every single system that had to work perfectly. One weak link, and the whole mission would fail. Then, just as he reached the center console, a sound cut through the air. Sharp, urgent, wrong. A shrill alarm began to echo from one of the control panels. At first, a few heads turned lazily, as if it was just another test alert. But the alarm kept going, and screens began to flash red warnings. The lead systems engineer, Maya, frowned and leaned over her terminal. Sundar's stomach tightened. "We've got a problem with the guidance system," Maya said, her voice flat but tense. Her fingers moved fast over the keyboard, trying to isolate the fault. Lines of code scrolled endlessly on her screen, like they were trying to outrun her. The guidance system was the heart of the rocket. Without it, the launch would be blind. It could drift off course, burn up in the atmosphere, or worse, crash into populated areas. How bad is it? Sundar asked, keeping his voice calm even though his pulse was racing. Maya hesitated. Right now. It's critical. The primary and backup modules are both reading corrupted input. I've never seen this pattern before. It's not a hardware fault. It looks like the software is fighting itself. Those words hit harder than he expected. Fighting itself? That didn't make sense. The software had been tested, simulated, and reviewed hundreds of times. It was locked down with multiple layers of security. Yet here it was, failing just hours before the launch. The room began to change. The steady hum of work was gone. People spoke faster, louder, tripping over their words. A few cursed under their breath. Sundar could see the panic creeping in like a slow fog. The countdown clock kept ticking. 2 hours, 4 minutes, 39 seconds. Every instinct told Sundar to take over, to start issuing rapid-fire commands. But he didn't. He knew that panic spreads faster than fire. Instead, he placed a hand on Maya's shoulder and said quietly, "Let's find the truth before we decide what to do." She nodded, her jaw tight. The engineering team split into groups. Some ran diagnostics on the rocket's onboard systems. Others combed through recent software updates line by line. A few tried to simulate the error in a virtual environment, hoping to isolate it without touching the real system. Minutes passed. The clock kept ticking, Dot, and then something stranger happened. The error started spreading to other modules. Communications began to drop in and out. Temperature readings from the rocket's fuel tanks started fluctuating wildly. It was like the rocket itself was resisting the launch. Maya muttered something about an emergent bug, a phrase Sundar had only heard in theoretical discussions. Emergent bugs were rare, unpredictable faults that arose from the complex interaction of perfectly fine systems. It was like a sudden storm appearing in a clear sky, no single cloud to blame, but the whole weather pattern turning against you. Still, Sundar didn't want to believe it. What if it's not a bug? He asked. What if it's something else? The room went quiet. They all knew what he was suggesting. Sabotage. It was a terrifying thought. But the truth was, the project had enemies. Some competitors had invested billions in their own satellite systems. If Nova succeeded, those investments would turn to dust. Sundar had received quiet warnings over the last few months. Messages that pretended to be friendly advice, telling him to slow down, to rethink. He had ignored them. Now he wondered if someone had decided to make him listen. They had 1 hour and 40 minutes left, and that's when the control center swung open. Everyone turned to look. Standing, there was a young man, maybe 19 or 20, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans. His hair was a little messy, and his hands were shoved awkwardly in his pockets. Behind him, Sundar saw the familiar blue jumpsuit of the building's janitorial staff, the young man's father. Mr. Ramirez had worked here for years. The boy stepped inside, looking a little lost, then said, I think I know what's wrong with your rocket. The room froze. Maya blinked at him. Who are you? Leo, the boy said, glancing around nervously. Leo Ramirez. I'm my dad's son. I was waiting for him downstairs, and I saw your test data on one of the hallway monitors. I think your problem isn't what you think it is. There was a moment of silence. Someone snorted. Another person muttered something about kids playing hero. But Sundar didn't laugh. There was something in Leo's eyes, a quiet confidence, like he had seen this kind of chaos before. What do you think it is? Sundar asked, his voice steady. Leo stepped closer to Maya's station, glancing at the code on her screen. His brow furrowed. This isn't a guidance system fault. It's a feedback loop. Your sensors are feeding the control module slightly delayed data, and the module's trying to correct for movements that already happened. It's overcompensating every time. The more it tries to fix itself, the worse it gets. It's like driving a car and only turning the wheel after you've already passed the curve. Maya stared at him. Her mouth opened, then closed. Sundar could see her mind racing. If Leo was right, then they weren't dealing with sabotage or a mysterious bug. They were dealing with a timing error, still dangerous, but fixable if they acted fast. Before anyone could speak, the countdown clock beeped again. 1 hour, 34 minutes, 15 seconds. Sundar looked at Leo and said, "Show us." And just like that, the fate of the mission rested on the shoulders of a janitor's son. Asterisk, the boy at the control was utterly silent, except for the faint ticking of the countdown clock. Every pair of eyes seemed locked on Leo, the young man who had just claimed to know what was wrong with one of the most advanced rocket guidance systems in the world. His hands were still hovering above the keyboard like he was holding his breath. Sundar could see the faint tremor in his fingers, not from fear, but from focus. There was a difference, and Sundar could tell. Maya, still half skeptical, moved aside reluctantly, giving him space at her terminal. "Be careful," she said, her voice taut. "This isn't a toy. One wrong command could wipe critical data or lock us out completely." Leo nodded without looking up. "I know. That's why I'm not going to touch the core files until I'm sure." His words were calm, but his eyes darted quickly across the lines of code and streaming sensor readouts. He was scanning faster than most of the engineers in the room could keep up with. Sundar stepped closer, folding his arms, partly to hide the tension in his own body. He wanted to understand how this young man could see something seasoned engineers had missed. How do you know about this kind of thing? He asked quietly. Leo didn't take his eyes off the screen. I've been building navigation systems for model rockets since I was 14. Not toys, real ones. I taught myself from manuals, open source, flight software, anything I could find online. When my dad was cleaning here at night, I'd sit in the lobby and read the journals the engineers left lying around. He'd pause briefly, almost like he was embarrassed to admit it. I didn't just read them, I learned them. A few people in the room exchanged glances. The kind of look that says, maybe this kid isn't just talking big. The tension in the control center was suffocating. The clock now read 1 hour, 32 minutes, 10 seconds. Each passing moment seemed to carry more weight. Outside the glass walls, the launch site stood bathed in sunlight. The tall white rocket gleaming against a perfect blue sky. Ready, but not ready. Leo began typing, calling up system logs from the last 3 test simulations. His eyes narrowed. See this? He said, pointing to a set of timestamps. There's a 0.42 second delay in sensor relay. That's just enough to throw your course correction loop into a spin. Maya frowned, leaning in, but our diagnostic tools didn't flag any delay. Because your diagnostic assumes the sensors are either fully functional or completely dead, Leo replied. It doesn't check for subtle latency. But rockets? Rockets don't forgive 0.42 seconds. They punish you for it. There was no arrogance in his tone, only certainty. Sundar could feel the room shifting. Some of the engineers who had dismissed Leo when he walked in were now quietly recalculating their opinion of him. But there was still an edge of doubt. After all, fixing a model rocket was one thing. This was a multi-billion-dollar space vehicle. Maya started running a quick latency test based on Leo's suggestion. Her eyes widened as the numbers lit. Up in confirmation. He's right, she whispered. The delay is real, and it's getting worse as the system cycles. The discovery was both a relief and a new source of panic. At least they knew the cause now, but the fix would be tricky. The sensors were hardwired into the rocket's mainframe, and replacing them wasn't an option with only an hour and a half left before launch. The only hope was to adjust the software to account for the delay. Leo straightened up, finally looking at Sundar directly. I can write a temporary patch. It won't be perfect, but it'll compensate for the latency. You'll get a stable flight path long enough to complete the mission. Maya's voice was sharp. And if your patch backfires, we lose the rocket, and the mission, and probably our jobs. Leo didn't flinch. And if you don't try it, you're guaranteed to lose all of that anyway. There was the kind of blunt truth that didn't come from ego, but from seeing the situation with absolute clarity. Sundar held Maya's gaze for a long moment, then said, "Give him access." There was a ripple through the room, some shocked, some relieved, some clearly terrified. Maya hesitated, then entered her override code, granting Leo limited but crucial control over the system. As he began to type, the room seemed to close in around him. The click of keys was the only sound. Sundar watched his fingers fly, occasionally, pausing as if he was visualizing the rocket's movements in his head before entering the next line of code. 20 minutes passed like that. The clock mercilessly moving forward. 1 hour, 12 minutes, 04 seconds. Then a new alarm blared. This one was different, harsher, deeper. Maya's head snapped toward her secondary monitor. Oh no, everyone turned. The rocket's fuel pressure readings were spiking wildly. The engineers monitoring the propulsion system scrambled to make sense of it. Leo didn't stop typing. That's not a fuel leak, he said without looking up. That's the control module overcompensating because it thinks the rocket is tilting. My patch is fighting it, but he trailed off. But what? Sundar pressed. Leo finally stopped, exhaling slowly. There's another loop. Deeper. This delay didn't just happen. Someone coded in. The words hit the room like a hammer. Maya's face drained of color. You mean sabotage? Leo nodded grimly. And if we don't find the second loop, even my patch won't hold. The rocket will self-correct into failure before it even clears the tower. Sundar's mind was racing. If this was sabotage, then it meant someone inside the project, maybe even inside this very room, had planted it. And they had less than an hour to find it before everything burned out. The countdown hit 58 minutes. Leo looked up at Sundar. Eyes steady but urgent. If I'm going to find it in time, I need full access. Every file, every system, no restrictions. Maya froze. That's insane. You'd have access to classified modules we don't even share with our own engineers. I don't care, Leo said. But if you want that rocket to fly, you have to trust me. The room went quiet again. Sundar could feel the weight of every stare on him. This was his call. He took a slow breath, his mind flashing back to his own days as a young engineer, when someone had taken a risk on him. Then he looked at Leo. You'll have it, Sundar said. Maya started to protest, but Sundar's voice cut through, calm but unshakable. Full access, now. Maya's hands moved reluctantly, but the code was entered. Leo now had the keys to everything. He cracked his knuckles, took one last deep breath, and said quietly, "All right, let's see who's trying to kill your rocket." The countdown read 55 minutes, 03 seconds, and somewhere, deep in the code, the hidden loop waited, like a snake coiled in the dark, ready to strike. Asterisk the name in the coda the moment the system granted him full access. Leo's screen flooded with lines of code, raw and unfiltered, cascading in endless streams. He leaned forward, eyes flicking rapidly from one section to another, filtering through thousands of variables, commands, and control loops. The engineers around him tried to follow, but his movements were too fast. Like he was listening to a song only he could hear and knew exactly when to pause, when to skip ahead, when to rewind a single line. Sundar stood directly behind him, hands clasped behind his back. He was doing his best to appear composed, but the truth was his heart hadn't slowed since the moment the first alarm sounded. He kept glancing at the countdown clock to 54 minutes, 21 seconds, each passing second, pushing them closer to a point of no return. The room felt different now. The earlier panic had turned into something colder, sharper. People spoke less, watched more. Sundar could sense it. The shift from shared problem-solving to quiet calculation. If Leo was right, and this was sabotage, then somewhere in this building was the person responsible. Maybe someone in the room. Maybe someone whose face he had greeted that very morning. Leo scrolled deeper into the code structure, muttering under his breath, "This is strange. Parts of this look like they were written months ago, others just weeks ago. But they're woven together like they've been here since day one." Maya, still standing nearby, leaned closer. "That doesn't happen naturally." "You're saying the code was planted in stages?" Leo nodded without looking up. "Yes. Like someone was building a trap piece by piece, making sure no single update looked suspicious. Then, without warning, he stopped. His eyes locked onto a single line buried deep in the command sequence. He zoomed in, isolating it from the surrounding blocks. Line 4827, override _Sundar _protocolio. Stared at it for a long second before his voice finally broke the silence. "Sundar, there's a line in here with your name on it." The words sliced through the air. Several people turned their heads sharply. Someone whispered, "What?" under their breath. Sundar stepped closer, his gaze fixed on the screen. He felt an odd chill at the base of his neck. "Show me." Leo highlighted the line and pulled up the associated subroutine. The name wasn't just decorative. It was tied to a set of conditional commands that would trigger only under very specific circumstances. One of those conditions matched the current guidance system's delay. Another matched today's exact launch parameters. Whoever wrote this, Leo said slowly, wanted the system to fail today, and they linked it directly to you. For a moment, Sundar didn't answer. His mind was spinning through the possibilities. Was this meant to frame him? To suggest to the investigation that he had been the one to override the rocket systems? It was clever, brutal, but clever. Maya's voice was quiet, but laced with suspicion. You think someone's trying to make it look like you did this? Sundar didn't look at her. I know it. The room seemed to grow heavier with unspoken thoughts. If Sundar was under suspicion, even informally, it meant the sabotage wasn't just a threat to the rocket. It was a direct strike against his reputation, his career, and maybe even his freedom. Leo's fingers began flying again. I can trace this line's edit history. If I'm right, we'll see exactly which user account added it and when. Do it, Sundar said, his voice low as Leo worked. Sundar's gaze drifted to the faces around him. Engineers he had worked with for years. People he had trusted, mentored, defended in meetings. But now each face carried the shadow of possibility. Who among them had the skill to do this? Who had the access? And more importantly, who had the motive? The countdown ticked to 49 minutes. Suddenly, Leo's screen flashed with the result. Inserted by guest underscore user underscore 17 timestamp 3:14 a.m. 3 weeks Agamaya frowned. Guest account? That's impossible. We have physical security on every terminal. Nobody uses a guest account without logging in through the building's badge system. Leo smirked faintly. Unless they didn't log in here. Remote access? Sundar asked. Leo nodded. Someone with inside knowledge of your firewall. They tunneled in, used a ghost account, made the change, and slipped out. The logs wouldn't catch them unless you knew exactly where to look. He leaned back for a moment, rubbing his temples. But there's something else. See this hash code? It's not random. It's familiar. Mia looked at it and shook her head. Doesn't mean anything to me. Leo glanced at Sundar. Does it mean anything to you? Sundar stared at the sequence of numbers and letters for a long moment. And then, very quietly, he said, yes. Everyone turned to him. It's my old employee ID? Sundar said slowly. From 15 years ago, when I first joined Google. A murmur spread through the room. Maya blinked. That's Pacific. Whoever did this didn't just want to frame you, Sundar. They wanted to send you a message. The implication was clear. This wasn't just corporate sabotage. It was personal. Leo's voice broke the tension. I think I can strip this loop out, but it's risky. It's tied to multiple other functions. Pull the wrong string, and the whole system could unravel before launch. How long will it take? Sundar asked. Leo hesitated. At least 30 minutes. Maybe more. The countdown read 46 minutes, 12 seconds. Then start now, Sundar said firmly. Leo bent back over the keyboard, the rapid clacking of keys filling the room again. Everyone else seemed frozen, torn between watching him and watching the clock. But Sundar's mind wasn't on the countdown anymore. He was thinking about the ID code, the deliberate choice to use it, and what it meant. He had only shared that old ID with a few people over the years, people who had been close to him. People he had trusted. And one of them, he realized with a sinking feeling, was somewhere close enough to be watching him right now. As Leo dug deeper into the code, another window suddenly popped up on his screen. It was an automated system message. One that none of the engineers had seen before. Warning. Unauthorized override attempt detected. Maya's head snapped toward the screen. That's coming from inside the building. Leo's hands froze over the keyboard. Someone's in here, trying to block me. And then, without warning, the entire guidance system interface went black. Asterisk blackout in the control room. Silence that followed the blackout was almost unbearable. The soft glow of dozens of screens had been the lifeblood of the control room. Without them, the space felt hollow, like a heart that had suddenly stopped beating. For a split second, no one moved. The only sound was the faint, steady tick of the countdown clock on the wall, 44 minutes. 2 seconds, like a cruel reminder that time was still moving, even if their systems weren't. Leo's face was lit only by the dim reflection of the emergency status panel. His fingers hovered uselessly above the keyboard. This isn't power failure, he said, his voice tense, but certain. The rocket's still online. We've just been cut off from it. Maya pushed back from her chair, standing abruptly. Cut off how? There's no way to sever control from inside unless... She stopped, catching herself. Unless someone in this room has access. Sundar finished for her. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the air like a sharp blade. Eyes shifted. Some people stiffened. Others avoided looking at him entirely. Suspicion was no longer abstract. It was here, breathing in the same space as all of them. Leo didn't look up from the darkened console. There's still a trace signal from the rocket's telemetry feed. I might be able to piggyback on that to reestablish a connection. Maya frowned. That's a one-way channel. You won't be able to send commands? I don't need to send commands yet, Leo said quickly. I just need to see inside again. Sundar nodded. Do it. Leo pulled a portable diagnostics module from his backpack, a small worn device covered in scuffs and stickers from years of use. He plugged it into the console, the screen on the device flickering to life. Its interface was crude compared to the sleek systems of the control room, but Sundar could see how quickly Leo moved through it, adapting old tools for new problems. While Leo worked, Sundar's gaze wandered over the room. He saw the nervous tapping of fingers, the restless shifting of feet, the way some people whispered to each other in corners. He noticed one engineer in particular, Darren, a tall man with a tense jaw and darting eyes, typing something quickly into his phone. Under the desk, Sundar filed it away. Saying nothing for now, the portable module began pulling fragmented telemetry data, small bursts of numbers and sensor readings. There, Leo said, pointing. Fuel pressure, altitude calibration, temperature control. They're still stable? That means the rocket's not in danger yet. Maya exhaled a small relief, but Sundar didn't miss the way her hands were still clenched. How do we get control back? She asked. Leo's brow furrowed. We can't just plug back in. Whoever did this is actively blocking us. If I try to reconnect through the normal system, they'll see it and shut me out instantly. So, what's the alternative? Sundar pressed. Leo hesitated, then glanced toward the far corner of the room where the primary network hub was located, a glass-walled chamber with restricted access. We bypassed the main control network completely and hooked directly into the rocket's secure uplink. Maya's eyes widened. That's not just restricted. That's locked behind triple authentication. Physical keys, biometric scan, and a manual override code. The only people with that level of clearance are... She stopped again. But the implication was obvious. Sundar finished the thought quietly. Me and two others. There was another ripple through the room. Sundar didn't need to look to know what they were thinking. That if only 3 people could access the uplink, and the system had been sabotaged, then one of those 3 might be the traitor. He could feel the weight of that suspicion settling on him like a physical thing. And yet, he knew that hesitation would cost them everything. Get the hub unlocked, Sundar said. I'll use my clearance. Maya hesitated. Are you sure? If something goes wrong, something has already gone wrong, he cut in. And we're running out of time. The countdown ticked past 39 minutes as Maya and a security officer escorted Sundar and Leo toward the network hub. The glass doors shimmered with a faint red glow from the locked status light. Sundar placed his palm against the scanner, the machine, humming softly as it read his fingerprints, then leaned forward for the retinal scan. The final step was the manual override code, 12 digits that he had memorized years ago, but never actually used in a live situation. The door clicked open with a hiss. Inside, the hub was a small, cold room filled with tall racks of servers, their blinking lights casting faint shadows on the floor. The steady whir of fans was loud enough to drown out distant sounds from the control room. Leo moved quickly, connecting his module directly to the uplink interface. Once I'm in, I'll need to navigate through the rocket's core system without triggering any of the watchdog protocols. Those are designed to lock us out permanently if they detect interference. Sundar stood beside him, watching the lines of code and signal traces appear on the small screen. He could feel the tension like static in the air. And then, just as Leo was about to push through the final security gate, the screen flashed with a message. Access denied. Uplink in use. Leo froze. Someone's already in. How is that possible? Sundar asked, His voice low. Leo single quotes. Fingers flew over the keys. They're in the rocket system right now, and they're pushing an update. Maya's voice crackled through the comms. In Sundar's ear, we just lost the secondary telemetry feed. Whatever they're doing, it's cutting our visibility to 0. The countdown hit 35 minutes. Leo's voice was urgent now. If they finish that update, the rocket will ignore all ground commands, including the abort sequence. It'll launch on its own with faulty guidance. Sundar felt a cold wave wash over him. Can you stop it? Leo didn't answer immediately. Maybe if I can trace their signal and cut them off at the source. He began working faster, pulling up layers of network traffic data. Each second was like chasing a shadow. Just as he got close, the intruder's signal shifted. And then, suddenly, Leo stopped. I found them, he whispered. Where? Sundar asked. Leo's eyes met his, and Sundar saw something there. Shock. Disbelief. The signal's coming from inside this building, Leo said, slowly. Not just this building. From the control room. Sundar's mind went blank for a moment. The control room was locked down, surrounded by security. The only people inside were the engineers, security officers, and a handful of trusted project leads. And one of them, right now, was actively trying to destroy everything. Asterisk shadows. In the dark, the building's lights flickered once, twice, then dimmed to the dull red glow of emergency mode. The air felt heavier, the silence sharper, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The usual hum of the servers in the network hub dropped to a lower pitch, the cooling fans slowing. Outside the glass walls of the hub, Sundar could see the faint red light spilling across the control room floor, turning everyone's faces into shadowed masks. Leo's small diagnostic screen stayed lit, but the signal traces began to falter. This isn't just a power fluctuation, he muttered, his voice tight. Someone's forcing the building onto backup systems. They're trying to cut my trace. Sundar stepped closer. Can you still find the terminal? Leo's eyes narrowed. Maybe. The drop to emergency mode slowed their connection. Whoever they are, they didn't plan for that. Give me 30 seconds. Sundar waited, though 30 seconds felt like an hour. Through the glass, he caught sight of Maya moving between consoles in the control room, trying to keep the team focused. But he also saw Darren, the tall engineer he had noticed earlier, leaning over his workstation, his face half hidden, hands moving quickly. Leo's voice snapped him back. Got it. Terminal ID. It's in the northeast corner of the control room. Sundar's mind mapped the layout. Instantly. Darren. Leo didn't ask how he knew. If it's him, we have to move fast. If he pushes that update through, the rocket will be locked in autonomous launch mode. No abort. No corrections. It'll either miss orbit or come down where it shouldn't. Sundar didn't wait for more. He pushed out of the hub, the glass door hissing shut behind him, and strode toward the control room. Each step was measured, but inside his pulse was a drumbeat in his ears. The red emergency lights painted everything, in tones of warning, making every shadow seem deeper. As he entered the control room, conversations faltered. All eyes followed him, some filled with hope, others with unease. He kept moving until he stood behind Darren's station. The engineer didn't turn, step away from the console. Sundar said quietly. Darren froze for a fraction of a second, then resumed typing. I'm stabilizing the comms, he said, his tone even but too quick. Step away. Sundar repeated. A little sharper. Maya was suddenly beside him. Sundar, what's going on? Leo's voice came through the comms in Sundar's ear. He's pushing the update right now. You've got maybe 90 seconds. Sundar reached out and disconnected the console's uplink cable. The screen in front of Darren froze mid-command. Darren finally turned, his face pale but his eyes defiant. What the hell are you doing? You just killed our connection. No, Sundar said softly. I just killed yours. Murmurs rippled through the room. Maya looked between them, confused and tense. Leo's voice came through again. I'm still in. The update's frozen, but only temporarily. If he reconnects from another station, we're back where we started. Darren pushed back from his chair. This is insane. You're accusing me while the clock's running out? Sundar held his gaze. I'm not accusing. I'm following the trace. The words seemed to hang in the air, pulling the room into deeper silence. Maya stepped forward. Trace? You mean you know exactly who's... Before she could finish, a sharp alarm cut through the air. The backup generators had kicked in, bringing partial systems online. But the moment they did, 3 more terminals lit up with the sabotage update. Leo single quotes as voice was urgent. It's not just one person. There are multiple terminals pushing. The same update? Either we've got more than one saboteur, or he's ghosting his signal through other machines. Sundar's mind raced. If Darren wasn't acting alone, or if he was masking his signal, then cutting him off here wouldn't be enough. He looked around the room. Every face was a possibility now. Years of shared work, late nights, and trust felt like thin paper. About to tear, lock the room, Sundar ordered. Maya hesitated. What? Lock it, he said, louder this time. No one in or out until we have control. Security moved quickly, sealing the doors. A low hiss signaled the magnetic locks. Engaging. A few people protested, but Sundar didn't care. They were trapped together now, and the saboteur was among them. The countdown ticked to 27 minutes. Leo's voice came through again, steady, but grim. I can cut the uplink from here, but if I do, you lose all control, even the ability to launch. It'll be over, and the mission dies. Maya looked at Sundar. So the choice is, risk the launch with sabotage still in the system, or abort completely and throw away months of work. Sundar felt the weight of it pressed down on him. Aborting meant failure in front of the world, and giving the saboteur exactly what they wanted. Going ahead meant trusting that Leo could root out the poison in time. He closed his eyes for a second, remembering the children in remote villages, the promise of this mission. Then he opened them, his voice calm but resolute. We move forward. There was no time for argument. Leo worked from the hub, his voice coming through the comms with rapid updates, cutting ghost paths, isolating main update loop. It's fighting me. Whoever's on the other side is good. Darren was still sitting, watching Sundar with an unreadable expression. You really think this is going to work? Sundar didn't look at him. I think we're going to find out. And then, without warning, Leo's voice changed, sharper, urgent. Sundar, I just traced the override key embedded in the sabotage. It's encrypted with a personal cipher. Maya leaned toward the comms. Whose? Leo hesitated, then said, Yours, Sundar. The room went still. Asterisk. The final menu tech control room felt like it had been hollowed out in an instant. Every face was turned toward Sundar, and he could see the shift in their eyes, from trust to doubt, from colleague to suspect. The air seemed heavier. The low red emergency lights casting long shadows that stretched across the floor like quiet accusations. Security moved closer, their steps slow but deliberate. One of them spoke in a low voice, as if wanting to break the tension too sharply. Sir, we need you to step away from the consoles. Sundar didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the comms unit, listening to Leo's voice as it came through. Steady, but tinged with urgency. I know how it looks, Leo said. But the cipher doesn't mean Sundar wrote it. It just means someone had access to his old encryption patterns, the same ones from 15 years ago. Maya's brow furrowed. But how would they even get that? Sundar's mind went back over the years, back to his earliest projects. The nights spent in cramped offices with a handful of young engineers who had believed in something bigger than themselves. There had been one in particular, brilliant, ambitious, but impatient. A man named Arjun. He had left the company over a decade ago after a bitter disagreement about ethics and data privacy. Leo, Sundar said slowly, run the cipher. Through a comparative database, cross-check for anyone who worked with me in the first 2 years at Google. There was a pause. Give me 20 seconds. The countdown ticked past 21 minutes. Security was still edging closer. The murmurs in the room grew louder, whispers of sabotage, betrayal, and the sheer insanity of trusting the man now at the center of suspicion. Leo's voice came back, sharper now. Got it. The cipher is a derivative modified from your original pattern. Only one person in the old team used that style. Arjun Ketan. Maya's eyes widened. Arjun? But he's been gone for years. He's been working freelance in aerospace systems, Sundar said quietly. If you got wind of this project? He let the thought hang. It didn't need finishing. Leo's voice cut in again, urgent. And he's not gone. The signal. I traced earlier. It's bouncing off external relays, but the source is less than a kilometer from here. He's controlling the sabotage remotely. The room erupted in overlapping voices. Security spoke rapidly into their radios, sending teams to the coordinates Leo provided. But Sundar knew they didn't have time to wait for an arrest. Arjun could finish the update from wherever he was, and the rocket would still be doomed. Leo. Sundar said, "Can you strip the sabotage without crashing the system?" "Not without triggering a watchdog lockout," Leo admitted. "But I can try to replace it instead of deleting it. Overwrite the malicious code with a clean guidance loop. The system will think it's still running the update, but it'll actually be my patch." "How long?" Leo hesitated. "If everything goes right, 5 minutes." The countdown read 18 minutes. "Do it," Sundar said. The control room shifted into a tense stillness again, every eye flicking between the wall clock and the dim glow from the surviving consoles. Leo's updates came through in bursts. Clearing, Ghost Path 1, inserting dummy loop, bypassing checksum validator, each step sounding like a thin bridge over a chasm. Then at 14 minutes, Maya's voice broke through, sharp with alarm. "He knows what we're doing." "The uplink's getting flooded with garbage data. He's trying to choke the connection." Leo cursed under his breath. "I'll need more bandwidth. I can't push the patch through this much noise." Without a second thought, Sundar moved to the central console. "Use my channel." Maya turned to him. "That's a direct command channel. If anything goes wrong, it's over anyway," Sundar said. He keyed in his override. Credentials and the main console lit up with a secure connection indicator. "You've got full bandwidth, Leo. Send it." The next few minutes blurred into a tense rhythm of clicks, keystrokes, and terse status reports. Sundar could feel sweat gathering at his temples, but his mind was locked on the single goal ahead. Get the patch in before the final launch checks were triggered, and then, at 7 minutes, Leo's voice came through, loud and clear. "Patch installed. Guidance system stable." There was a collective exhale in the room, but Sundar didn't. "Relax. Lock the uplink," he ordered. "Nobody touches it until we launch." Maya ran the final diagnostics. Guidance nominal, fuel pressure stable. All systems green. For the first time in what felt like hours, Sundar allowed himself a small breath. But the victory was edged with something deeper. The knowledge that trust had been shattered. That someone outside had come dangerously close to destroying not just the mission, but his name out as the countdown ticked into its final minutes. Security confirmed over the comes, target in custody. Transmitting ID now. The photo came through, grainy but unmistakable. Arjun, older, with lines etched deep into his face, but the same eyes filled with sharp intelligence and bitterness. He said you'd understand why he did it. The officer added over the blind. Sundar didn't answer. He just turned back to the console, watching as the countdown hit 0. The rocket's engines ignited in a blinding plume, the roar shaking the glass walls. The room was bathed in the light of fire and determination. On the big screen, they watched the vehicle rise, slicing cleanly into the sky. The guidance system held steady, the trajectory perfect. Cheers erupted, but Sundar simply closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over him.